إن الله وملائكته يصلون.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Ben Miller and we're back in the studio today with humanitarian and Sufi scholar Amna Salahuddin to answer questions about the religion of Islam and the Muslims who are under attack by many groups across the world today. Amna is helping us understand that Islam is a religion of peace, love, tolerance, and compassion, and is explaining the different principles and rules of Islam. I also want to thank the viewers who have given us positive feedback on our previous sessions and who have encouraged us to continue these efforts to clarify what Islam and the Quran really teach. Also, Amna and many other Muslims like her are doing an immense amount of humanitarian work and offering assistance to both Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And it seems that Islam has a major focus on kindness, tolerance, and compassion. We have received many questions about Amna's life and the charity she has formed and runs, the Salahuddin Education Services Group, which offers education to impoverished Pakistani children and gives humanitarian assistance here in the U.S. and abroad to those in need of food, clothing, and other necessities. We have also received more questions on Islam, and many people have contacted us to try and find out more answers on the religion. Please let us know your questions, comments, and concerns regularly so that we may improve our show. As for the questions about Amna, we will say that she started early with her study of the Quran, the Hadith, and the Fiqh, and spent almost her whole life to try and understand the Word of God. She also took instruction of the Prophet very seriously, which says to seek knowledge and wisdom and to travel for that. To that end, Amna has traveled more than half the world seeking knowledge, and her real estate business has given her the flexibility she needs to do that. The organization she runs is funded by her and her supporters, and everyone involved is a volunteer. Also, Amna and the SES board pay for most of the administrative costs themselves. So if you make a donation, almost all of it will go to the charity and the deserving people, so no money is used to pay anyone's salaries or daily administrative or travel expenses. Amna and her family, friends, and supporters do this work purely as their duty. I would now like to have Amna comment on some of the feedback we have received, and then of course to open the floor up to some questions. Amna?
Thank you so much, Ben. That was so kind. And hello to everyone, and also an assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to everyone, which means peace and blessings unto all of you. We have received a very tremendous response to the show. People are liking it. They have encouraged us. Different schools of thought, people from different schools of thoughts have lauded this effort and have asked us to continue. So that's very encouraging. And I really thank the viewers who have sent in questions and positive feedbacks and some very positive comments and words of encouragement. I do want to say, though, and I have been wanting to address this, that I understand that this is not something very small that we are doing. It's a big responsibility. And I do realize the responsibility. Many times I feel that I am maybe not capable of this kind of responsibility, but I am attempting as a humble servant of God and as a Muslim to try to attempt it to educate non-Muslims and Muslims on the principles of Islam and to bring the true face of Islam out to the world to understand what the real Islam is about. Now, I understand that my knowledge is not perfect. My wisdom is not perfect. Perfection lies only with God. We are just human beings who are making an attempt and striving and trying to do our duty. So I do ask for everyone's forgiveness, all of your forgiveness, everyone else's forgiveness for any acts of omission or commission, for any mistakes that I make, for anything that I do not quote 100%. I am doing my best, and I have several years of knowledge and study behind me. Because ever since I was a very, very young person, I started, and I actually, as a teenager, I had studied all the hadith and the fiqh, and then I started with the Quran, and then I stuck to the Quran and revised it hundreds of times. But I just want to say that I am but a human being. human beings cannot be perfect, their knowledge cannot be perfect, their interpretations cannot be perfect. So again, an apology to anybody that does not like anything that is said in the show. Of course, I'm also apologetic and very humbled in front of our Lord, our God, our Almighty Maker for any mistakes that we make. And please keep sending us your criticisms, your compliments, your feedbacks, whatever questions that you have, because that is helping us improve our show. But overall, I will say that we have received tremendous encouragement and we have received very positive feedback, which is prompting us to continue these sessions.
All right, let's get some questions. We have one right down here in the front.
Islam closer to Catholicism in practice, just like Catholicism do Muslims have sacramentos small.
Okay. You are asking if Islam and Catholicism are similar? Yes. Okay. Yes, I have had that question asked by other people as well. And then you want to know about the sacraments, the Catholic sacraments, if we have similar sacraments in Islam? Yeah. Okay. And I am going to guess that you are from the Catholic faith, right? Yes, you are. Okay. All right. What I want to say is, and I have studied Christianity somewhat. I don't have a perfect knowledge of Christianity. But what I understand, the Christian sacraments or the Catholic sacraments are the outward symbols or outward signs of inner spiritual enlightenment or inner spiritual grace or God's grace, or the outer action which is actually a reflection of the inner grace. And if that is what a sacrament is, then what I will say that, and I think there may be 7 sacraments in Catholicism, and then Christianity has, 7, and I don't know if some groups have less, but, again, you can feel free to correct me, anyone on that. But Islam does not have exactly sacraments, but we call them 5 pillars of Islam. And these 5 pillars of Islam are somewhat, I would say somewhat similar to the Catholic or the Christian sacraments. And the 5 pillars of Islam are the basis of Islam. They are what Islam, they're called pillars because just like a building stands on pillars, Islam stands on these 5 principles. These 5 principles, just like the Catholic sacraments, are the outward symbol showing the inner purity or showing the inner devotion or showing the gift and grace of God that's given to you in your heart, but which manifests in these actions. So the five pillars of Islam is, number 1 is the Shahada, the bearing witness, that there is only one God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. The second pillar of Islam is zakat. Zakah is the charity, the alms due for the poor, that is mandatory on all Muslims to give every year. And then the third pillar is the salah, which is the formal prayer. And the Muslims are enjoined to pray at least 5 times a day at set appointed times or within a range of time. And that is another pillar of Islam, that is the outward manifestation of the inner devotion. And then the other pillar of Islam is fasting. And I know that in your religion or Christianity or I see some other faiths represented, that all religions really have a big concept of prayer and fasting and also charity. So we can say that Islam is similar to, the 5 pillars of Islam is similar to the Catholic sacraments, but also similar to a lot of the other religious principles where you have to show outward sacrifice or outward signs of your worship and your devotion to God. And I believe it exists in pretty much all religions. I don't think there's any religion that would not have it. And then we have the fasting, as I said. And then the last pillar of Islam, which is very important. And then I'm going to touch on all of these principles one by one in short. We can't go into too much detail because there's a lot to cover, but we'll do it enough so everybody understands what these pillars are and what they mean. And the last pillar is the pilgrimage, which is called Hajj or Al-Hajj, and all Muslims are enjoined to take it at least once in their lifetime, if they have the financial means, and to try to perform that pilgrimage to Mecca. So I'm going to, as always, I want to try and quote as much from the Quran as I am able to. I won't be able to quote, of course, all the verses and chapters, because especially on both the Shahada and also on the Salah, the prayer, there's a lot of them. Actually, they say that prayer, the formal prayer, is mentioned about 700 times in the Quran. So it'll be impossible to do something like that. But I want to just touch on some of the main verses and then explain and go over again a little bit on what these pillars are. So the very first pillar, as I said, is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, which is saying that I bear witness, that the Muslims are saying we bear witness that there is only one God. There is no God except for the one God. Now the name for God, or the label or title for God in Islam, is Allah, which is the Arabic word for God. But it is no different than the same God that everybody else bows down to and worships. So there is no God but one, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, or he is the true messenger of God, or the book that he got was a good book with good laws to follow. And actually, the Muhammadur Rasulullah part, I just want to also clarify to everyone here that Muhammad brought the same message that all the other prophets of God brought. He brought the same message that Adam, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, David, all of them brought. You know, he brought the same message. He confirmed what they brought. And then he brought some new laws, because in 7th century pagan Arabia, you know, you had a different set of people, you had more societal problems, you had different things that had to be dealt with. So just like at different times, different people came, good people, messengers of God came with good messages and told us, hey, do this, don't do bad, don't be unjust, don't kill, don't steal, don't loot and plunder, be just, be good, be kind. So just like that, Muhammad brought Islam, and you know, we believe that God revealed the Quran to him, and this is the word of God, and then that talks about all of these other injunctions as well. So when you say you bear witness to one God, I do want to touch on one other thing, that we're not just talking about idols or outward gods. When you bear witness to one God, you are really saying that every God from my heart is gone. The God of money, the God of desire, the God of greed, the God of the world. So it's kind of a philosophical concept. Not everybody gets into the deeper meaning of something like that, but I would encourage my audience here and the viewers to think about what La ilaha illallah means, and to think about what La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah means, because it is not just what some people think that, oh, you know, it's only one God, so don't think there are other gods, or don't worship idols, or the meaning is very much deeper. God has several attributes, and we need to understand that nobody else really can have or has those attributes. So our benefactor is God. The person that can let any harm come to us is God, because everything returns to him for his sanction. God is omnipotent. He is almighty. He is everything. So when you bear witness to something, you're not just saying it. You're bearing a witness to it. You are swearing upon it. Bearing witness means I saw it with my own eyes. I saw this. But, you know, even though we say that, and a lot of Muslims, myself included, we say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, we need to act it out. We need to bring it into our lives, to truly bring God into our lives, to understand that nobody else has God's attributes. It's God who is in full command and has the full command over us and everything. And that is what what La ilaha illallah means. And then when we say Muhammadur Rasulullah, Muslims are confirming that they believe Muhammad to be definitely a messenger of God who brought the truth, who brought the Quran, which confirms all the other good messages before it, and then gives new laws and rules, or what we call the Sharia, according to the times of 7th century pagan Arabia, and the Muslims believe for the whole world to come, because we believe that all the messages in the Quran are universal. We believe that the 5 pillars of Islam are universal, because we believe that when you follow these 5 pillars, and actually if you, each of you, from whatever faith you come to, if you kind of think about it, the concept is there in every religion, and these kind of pillars exist in every religion, and they strengthen the person's belief and worship. And these outward symbols are important. And there is this debate about, okay, if you receive inner purity, do you still have to follow the outward sacrament or the outward pillar or the outward worship? But definitely we do, because that constantly shows our humility and our worship. And we have to constantly show to God when we believe how we are putting it in action and how we are showing it to Him. When Muslims get up and they pray 5 times a day, they have to also perform ablution, which is washing your face, hands, feet in a certain way to cleanse yourself. You have to wear, clean clothes. You have to cover yourself fully. So all of these rituals are actually not easy to follow. It's a difficult practice. So it's there to show your sacrifice, to cleanse you more. And let me go to the very opening. It's actually chapter 2, but it's actually the opening chapter after Al-Fatiha, because Al-Fatiha is like everything for the Quran. It's like the gist of things. But the actual opening right away has the 2 pillars mentioned, so I would like to just read some of that. Alif Lam Mim, Zalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fi, Hudan lil Muttaqin. Allazina yu'minuna bil ghaybi wa yuqimuna as-salata wa mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. This is the book, in it is guidance sure without doubt to those who fear God, who believe in the unseen and are steadfast in prayer and spend out of what we have provided for them, and who believe in the revelations sent to thee and sent before thy time, and in their hearts have the assurance of the hereafter. These are on true guidance from their Lord, and it is those who will prosper. So God right away says, like when we talk about the Shahada, because God is unseen, we don't see Him, but we believe in Him, we feel His presence. We know when we exercise our mind and our wisdom and our rationale, we know that God is there. We know there's a hand behind us in charge of everything, who's governing this whole universe and this world. And everything that comes with it. And then right away, God talks about the people who bear this witness, who believe in God or who believe in the unseen, they establish prayer. They show it by worship to God, and they show it by a lot of worship to God. They constantly do this worship to God. And then they spend off their sustenance. So the 2 pillars are mentioned up front. And I'm reminded of, I don't know if I have the exact quote, but I have, there's one little verse I'd like to quote, which says, Inna salata tanha anil fahshai wal munkar, which says that formal prayer actually is a tool to end bad thoughts and bad actions and any obscenity or lewdness. So the formal prayer, when you get up and you do that ablution 5 times a day, and then you perform your prayer morning, evening, middle of the day, night, sunset, before dawn, all of that helps cleanse your soul, takes you to the righteous path, takes you to become a good human being, brings you to the good, makes you become a muttaqi, which is the righteous person, the good person. Okay, and then the 4th pillar that I wanted to mention is fasting. Islam encourages a lot of fasting, formal fasting, to go without food and drink. And that, I understand that that's also a concept in many religions, in most religions. And for the fasting surah, what I would like to do is read from, again, chapter 2, which is Al-Baqarah, and read verse 183, which says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba alal lazina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, that you may learn self-restraint, or some interpreters have said, so you may attain salvation. So whether it's to achieve self-restraint, self-discipline, or whether it's to attain salvation, fasting is a very big part of Islam and a very important pillar of Islam. Because it is just like, as you mentioned, the sacraments in Catholicism, we have these 5 pillars that are the outward symbols of worship that help us attain that inner purity, or comes with that inner guidance or inner grace from God to manifest in that outward symbol. The very last pillar of Islam, and very important, and I have had the good luck of performing it, the pilgrimage, is the Hajj. And in chapter 22, which is also Surah Hajj, let me look for that. Let me look that where I can find Surah Hajj. We do have some verses that talk about, actually we have quite a few verses, so let me see how far I can go with this. وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ دَامِرٍ يَأْتِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ فَجٍّ عَمِيقٍ لِيَشْهَدُوا مَنَافِعَ لَهُمْ وَيَذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَّعْلُومَاتٍ عَلَى مَا رَزَقَهُم مِّن بَهِيمَةِ الْأَنْعَامِ فَكُلُوا مِنْهَا وَأَطْعِمُوا الْبَائِسَ الْفَقِيرَ ثُمَّ لْيَقْضُوا تَفَثَهُمْ وَلْيُوفُوا نُذُورَهُمْ وَلْيَطَّوَّفُوا بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ ذلك ومن يعظم حرمات الله فهو خير له عند ربه وأهلت لكم الأنعام إلا ما يتلى عليكم فاجتنبوا الرجس من الأوثان واجتنبوا قول الزور حنفاء لله غير مشركين به ومن يشرك بالله فكأنما خر من السماء فتخطفه الطير أو تهوي به الريح في مكان سهيق. And then these a bunch of verses. Actually, it's from 27 to 31. I'm going to read the whole thing because it kind of gives a little bit of a gist of the believers and the pilgrimage, and then we can talk about it just a little bit before we conclude. And proclaim the pilgrimage among men. They will come to thee on foot and mounted on every kind of camel, lean on account of journeys through deep and distant mountain highways, that they may witness the benefits provided for them, and celebrate the name of God through the days appointed, over the cattle which he has provided for them for sacrifice, and then eat you thereof, and feed the distressed ones in want. Then let them complete the rites prescribed for them, that is, the rites for pilgrimage, perform their vows to God they took, the renewing those vows, and again circumambulate the ancient house, which is the house of God, the Kaaba, which is the holy Kaaba, which is in Mecca. And zillions of Muslims go there every year to perform the Hajj, and then also the Umrah, which is sort of like Hajj, except that you don't do it in the months of Hajj, because there are special Hajj months in the month of Zulhijj where we perform the Hajj. And then such is the pilgrimage, whoever honors the sacred rites of God, for him it is good in the sights of his Lord, lawful to you. For food in pilgrimage are cattle. This is for the sacrifice. One of the big rites of the pilgrimage or tenets of the pilgrimage is that you sacrifice animals, and that is in commemoration of Abraham and his son. You know, Abraham's story of when he was asked to sacrifice his son, and then God, I think the Christian tradition says ram. We believe it was a lamb that was sent, and God let the son be, and forgo the son, and then accepted his sacrifice for the animal. So this is talking about what is lawful for that sacrifice, because it was made lawful to sacrifice cattle, except those mentioned to you as exceptions. And then I would say pork is an exception, because the pig is part of the cattle, but Islam prohibits eating pork or eating the flesh of pigs, except those mentioned to you as exception, but shun the abomination of idols, and shun the word that is false, being true in faith to God, and never assigning partners to him. If anyone assigns partners to God, he is as if he had fallen from heaven and been snatched. So this is kind of summing up the pilgrimage and also the essence of the belief. So it is saying, you heard and saw how important it is to perform the Hajj, and how much it, God is saying it purifies you. Go there. It's not easy, and I have been to those parts of the world. I also went a couple of years ago to the Masjid al-Aqsa, the golden, what we call the golden mosque, and the Golden Dome, and to Jerusalem and Palestine, Israel, all of those areas, plus of course Saudi Arabia, Mecca and Medina. And when you go to those parts, it is quite a journey, because there are mountains, there are hills. You have to, if you're doing it by road, it's up and down. So it's definitely an undertaking, and it's an undertaking done once in a lifetime if someone can afford it. And that is supposed to really cleanse your soul, because when you make that difficult journey, because it's not such an easy journey, when you make that difficult journey, then when you make it with the purest of intentions, and if God accepts that pilgrimage, accepts that Hajj, then you are forgiven, and your sins are forgiven, and you're supposed to have cleansed yourself. But it's a matter of a big responsibility to perform the Hajj. And some people do commercialize it somewhat, but we have to say that, we have to try to keep it as pure as we can. Now, as a Muslim, I do not believe in passing judgment on anyone. So everybody knows what they're doing, why they're doing, and I do not know the circumstance behind anybody's motivation. But we have to believe that everybody does it with a very pure motive. We pray for everybody's safety when they go for Hajj, and we pray for everybody's Hajj and pilgrimage to be accepted. That is how every Muslim has to be with the other Muslims, that you have to constantly pray that God, please accept everybody's fast, keep them safe, bring them back home safe and sound to their families. Now, the other thing I do want to mention is that even though Hajj and the pilgrimage is enjoined, it's enjoined if you do not have duties that you have to fulfill. So if you have, small children, you have to raise them, or you have older parents and you have to take care of them, then the Hajj is not enjoined on you. Then you have to fulfill and perform those duties. Similarly, if you do not have the financial means, you cannot starve your family and your children and then try and go for Hajj. That is not kind of missing the essence of Hajj. So it is important to understand why we're doing it, and Hajj is actually a completion of all your duties. So it's not for someone to just get up, and you just travel in air-conditioned first class, just go for Hajj, have a great time, do a lot of shopping, come back. It really is after you have lived your life one of duty, one of immense duty and toil and hard work, and done your duty 24/7, every single second and minute of the day. Then you perform the Hajj as though to fully cleanse yourself and to put a seal on that cleansing, or to put God's approval, or to seek God's final approval by that difficult journey. And even though the journey is not as difficult nowadays, because we are living in a modern day world, people are flying, but I would still say that when the heart is pure and the intention is pure, that lends a lot to the toil. I remember my own time when I was going to Hajj. I was literally going crazy with the desire, and my visa, I had a big problem getting the visa, because they had age restrictions and limitations that women from certain age cannot travel without what's called a mahram, because you have to have your father, brother, husband, son, uncle, someone very close to you traveling with you. Otherwise, the government regulations do not allow you to perform Hajj. So for a young woman, it's difficult to perform Hajj. And then it was a very disappointing time. I went through a few months of agony. And then just all of a sudden, out of the blue, one of my brothers, and I had not wanted him to take off from work, but he just God put it in his heart. He decided, he talked to his boss, who immediately gave him the leave, and I was able to go. And I'm so thankful now that I had to go through a lot of mental torture, if at least not physical, and the toil and the hard work in trying to get the visa. Now I understand that that was important for, the sacrifice that I was trying to show, and I'm really thankful to God. At that time, I was just in tears all the time because I was feeling that, oh, I really want to perform Hajj, and I felt I couldn't. But alhamdulillah, that happened, and that happens for a lot of Muslims, and may Allah accept everyone's Hajj. May God accept everyone's Hajj. So yes, to sum up, and I think that just like you have the Catholic 7 sacraments, you have other sacraments in Christianity, you have the 5 pillars of Islam, you have in the Baha'i faith several tenets and pillars. I think it's like that in pretty much, that's the concept of all religions, that inner purity, inner devotion has to manifest itself in certain actions outwardly, and Islam does stand on these 5 pillars of Islam.
Amna, thank you for the response. Right now we have to take a quick commercial break, so stay right where you are, and we'll be back in a moment. All right, everybody, welcome back. Looks like we have another question right down here in the front.
Is the Muslim fast similar to Lent? How many days is it observed? What time period is it? And how does the Muslim faith differ from Christianity fast?
Okay, very good, very nice. The Muslim fast is somewhat similar to Lent, although the periods, the times, and the observance, I would say, is a little different. Because, just like we talked about earlier or in previous sessions also, that God gave different laws to the different people according to the need of the time and according to the disciplining, what he wanted for those people. I believe the Lent is more like a 40-day fast. In Islam, the fast is for 30 days. It is for the whole month of Ramadan. So Islam has these months, just like we talked about the pilgrimage, which is performed in the month of Zulhijjah, which is the last month of the 12th month in Islam, Zulhijjah. It starts with Muharram, and then in the middle is Ramadan, and then at the end is Zulhijjah when you perform the pilgrimage. Ramadan is the holy month of fasting. Now, I had already quoted one of the verses. I'll still touch on it again about the fasting, that it's enjoined, but that was, I believe it was chapter 2, 183, that, or you who believe fast to attain salvation or to attain self-purity or self-restraint. But I will say that the Muslim fast, so from what I understand about Lent is that it's for 40 days, and everyday fast is observed except for Sundays in that 7-week period. And that brings from 46, it brings the number down to 40. And that in the Catholic fast, I believe it's a 1 big meal and then maybe 1 or 2 small ones. But in the Muslim fast, I believe in the Catholic fast or the Christian fast, it is allowed to take a little water or take some fruit or eat a little bit, not too much, and then they also abstain from eating meat. Like one of the main concepts of Lent is that they do not eat meat. But in the Muslim fast, we do not eat at all day. There is no food and no drink in the Muslim fast. So from early morning, which is before dawn starts, you stop eating, and then right at dawn, the fast starts till dusk, till sunset. So it's a little different. Instead of 40 days, it's 30 days. It is consecutive, so there's no break on a Sunday, like I believe in Lent there is a break on a Sunday. And then it's not just meat that you give up, it's also entire food and drink for the whole day. And the other thing I want to say is that I do believe that a lot of Catholics observe fast very strictly as well. Like besides meat, they don't eat much, or they may just drink a little water. So, in every belief or every religion, there are sub-beliefs. But in Islam, I would say that the belief is uniform. All the Muslims fast 30 days in the holy month of Ramadan, and that is the month when we believe that the Quran was also sent down to the Prophet. The Quran was revealed. So it's considered a very holy month. And after the 30 days of fasting, it culminates in this huge, big celebration called Eid, or Eid al-Fitr. And Eid al-Fitr means that the Fitr is like a charity giving in the name of God for the poor. So at this Eid, everybody gives, there's an appointed portion of your money that everybody gives at fitr that gets distributed to the poor. And it's a big celebration after the fasting month. And needless to say, of course, everybody eats a lot on Eid because after the whole month of fasting, you have the Eid. But even though I made a joke about it, I do want to say that the Muslim fast is very tough. God calls on Muslims to not just give food and drink, which is, of course, lawful things, to show their sacrifice and show their worship to God. But Muslims have to abstain from so many lawful things. So you're asked to be very self-disciplinary in that fast. So, for example, you cannot have marital relations when you're fasting. Most people would not want to go to the movies or listen to music or indulge in a lot of pleasurable things in Ramadan. Because when you fast, the concept of the Muslim fast is that you pretty much fast from a lot of the lawful things, not just food and drink, but you have to come into a pure state of just loving God and worshiping God, that through this outward symbol of giving up food, drink, and other things you like, other fun things you like you might want to go to the movie, or you might want to go indulge in music, or you might want to just not care that much. But when it comes to fasting, you have to be really conscious how you're conducting yourself. I mean, we're not supposed to lie as Muslims ever, but when you're fasting, the concept is that if you utter a lie from your mouth when you're fasting, then the mouth fast would be broken. If you steal when you're fasting, the fast of the hand would be broken. If you have a bad thought, the fast of the heart would be broken. If you walked to do some injustice, or you walked somewhere to do something bad or to hurt someone, then the fast of the foot or the leg would be broken, because the fast is further divided into parts of the body, that every part of the body is fasting. So the eye has to be pure. So the gaze has to be pure, the heart has to be pure, the actions of the hands, the legs, the feet, the whole body have to show that the person is fasting. So it's not just the giving up of food and drink. And I'm sure I'm pretty sure Lent, I believe, was for penance, and it was kind of the same concept, to purify and cleanse yourself, especially for baptism, etc., right? And we have that concept in a very strict form, that all Muslims have to fast 30 days. They have to give up not just food and drink, but a lot of the things that they love. They have to observe that fast very strictly and be very conscious of how they are conducting themselves in that fasting mode for that fast to be accepted. Now, we have discussed it. I've already quoted verse 183 of Surah Baqarah, which is chapter 2. So I'm going to continue for the fasting, for the other fasting verses, because that we already covered in the last one. And that'll actually answer some of the questions that you're asking as well. أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجب دعوة الداعي إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون أهل لكم ليلة الصيام الرفث إلى نسائكم هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن علم الله أنكم كنتم فتختانون أنفسكم فتاب عليكم وعنا عنكم فالآن باشروهن وابتغوا ما كتب الله لكم وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل let me go to the translation. And you know, the very good thing is that I totally forgot to touch on one thing, and then when I read the verses, it reminded me of that, who does not have to fast? So of course, just out of wisdom and common sense, if somebody is sick, or if they're not in their homes, they're traveling, they're out doing some kind of duty or some toil, then they do not have to fast in the month of Ramadan, and they can make it up. Or they could also, one other way to make up for it is to also feed the poor. And you know, there are certain ways to make up for the fast that you might have missed. So let me read the translation. Fasting is for a fixed number of days, but if any of you is ill or on a journey, the prescribed number should be made up from days later. For those who can do it with hardship is a ransom, the feeding of one that is indigent. But he that will give more of his own free will, it is better for him, and it is better for you that you fast, if only you knew. So it said if you miss a fast, you can feed a person who's hungry, but if you do more than that, more than one person, then that's even better for you. So the more you give, the more sacrifice, the more worship, the more good deeds, the better for all of us. It's really, in the end, doesn't benefit God, it benefits us. We do it for ourselves. Ramadan is the month in which was sent the Quran, down the Quran as a guide to mankind, with also clear signs for guidance and judgment between right and wrong. So every one of you who is present at his home during that month should spend it in fasting. But if anyone is ill or on a journey, the prescribed period should be made up by days later. Allah intends every facility for you. He does not want to put you through difficulties. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify him in that he has guided you, and perchance you shall be grateful. And eat and drink until, and as for the timing that you asked, what timing, and the Quran says, and eat and drink until the white thread of dawn appear to you, distinct from its black thread, then complete your fast till the night appears. So that tells me that early morning, dawn to dusk, is the period of fasting, and it's uniform in Islam that no Muslim would eat or drink at all. That is the minimum fast, to give up your food and drink. But as I said, you have to give up a lot of the other things you love and live a life of purity to attain that purity within and that salvation. All right, did that help? Thank you so much.
All right, Amna, thank you again for that great response. Looks like we have another question right back here in the back.
Does Islam allow child marriage? And what would you say about the criticism of Muhammad marriage to a very young girl and having multiple wives?
Okay, that has been a criticism of Islam. There's a lot of myths and there's a lot of falsehoods associated with that myth that Muhammad married a child or married a child bride, and I want to get into some of that. Islam, according to the Quran, prohibits anything to do with children. So it prohibits child marriage. It talks about orphans and giving them their wealth when they come of age. So basically, it's prohibiting any kind of business or anything with any child. So Islam is not in the Quran, when you read through the different verses, and I'm going to go through some of them, and Islam talks about marriage as a covenant between two consenting adults, men and women. It used the term women and men, and it does not allow for child marriage. So the Quran does not allow it. Now, the reference that Muhammad married Aisha, which was one of the wives, and he married her at 9 years of age, is in the Hadith. It is not in the Quran. So that is derived from Sahih Hadith. Now, what I want to say about Hadith is that the Hadiths were the sayings of the Prophet or recounts from those days. There was a lot of rigorous activity in obtaining the pure and correct hadith, but they are not infallible like the Quran. So anything that is derived from a hadith, there may be some loopholes once in a blue moon. Now, the hadith that Aisha was 9-year-old when Muhammad married her has been narrated by Hisham. This one recounter of hadith. Actually, there are verses in the Quran that says do not force women. Do not force women to marry. So you can't even force a grown woman, let alone a child. The person that recounted this hadith, Hisham, had lived in Medina, and he recounted from the Medina days, but then later on he went to Iraq. And the gentleman is known and popularly believed to have had a lot of memory loss in his old age. And the hadith that talks about Aisha being 9 years of age is coming from the Iraqis. And it's coming from the period when he had moved to Iraq. He was very old, and he is supposed to have had Alzheimer's. So he was constantly battling with his memory and forgetting incidents. When you look at the chronology of events surrounding Aisha's age, there is just no way she could have been 9 when she got married. There's just no way, because her sister Asma, Aisha and Muhammad got married after Muhammad migrated. Aisha's sister was 27 or 28. Asma bint Abu Bakr was 27 or 28 at that time. And Aisha was 10 years younger to her. So she was about 17 or 18. So just the way the chronology of events is, Aisha had embraced Islam early on, which was several years ago. So there was no way she could have been 9, because they married a year or two, a couple of years after the migration. So there's just no way the chronology of events supports that Aisha could have been 9. She was around 18 to 20. That is where this age bracket, because if her sister was 27 or 28, and then she was 17 or 18, and then it happened within a couple of years, then it puts her right around 18 to 20. Islam does not allow anyone to marry who has not reached puberty. But the way marriage is mentioned in Islam, because even sometimes a girl of 13 or 12 or 13 can attain puberty. But the way marriage is mentioned in Islam is a solemn covenant. But Quran does not give that legitimacy. Aisha could just not have been, and I want all Muslims, all viewers, all non-Muslims to know that Aisha just could not have been, according to the chronology of events, when she embraced Islam, how old she was, how old her sister was, when she got married. The time period just doesn't coincide. And Aisha was engaged before the Prophet to someone else, and that engagement did not go through. So you tell me, they say that they got her engaged at 6, and then she was already engaged to someone. Does that sound right? Does that sound anything logical? Obviously not. What we want to say is that chronologically, it's next to impossible. It did not happen. It is not supported by the Quran. And if there's anything in the Hadith that is in conflict from the Quran, then the Quran will prevail, not the Hadith. So that has to be established. The Quran is supreme. That's the word of God. So nothing in the Hadith can be contradictory to the Quran. So if it's contradictory to the essence of the Quran, then somebody has not narrated that hadith correctly, or that hadith has not been interpreted correctly, or, during the chain of them passing it on, words get, mixed around, twisted, turned, and different minds interpret religion differently and different words differently. So no, Aisha just could not have been 9 when she got married. I also want to quote a couple verses and then come to the logic of the multiple wives. I want to talk about that. But let me just quote a few verses. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَادْفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ وَلَا تَأْكُلُوهَا إِسْرَافًا وَبِدَارًا أَن يَكْبَرُوا وَمَنْ كَانَ غَنِيًّا فَلْيَسْتَعْفِفْ وَمَنْ كَانَ فَقِيرًا فَلْيَأْكُلْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِذَا دَفَعْتُمْ إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فَأَشْهِدُوا عَلَيْهِمْ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ حَسِيبًا. Make trial of orphans until they reach the age of marriage. So you have to take care of the orphan, and you're going to be tested because you're holding on to their belongings and their money and all of that till they reach the age of marriage, which means that they have to reach the marriage age to be able to marry. If then you find sound judgment in them, release their property to them, but consume it not wastefully nor in haste against their growing up. So basically, this verse lays down the fact that when there are children or minors or orphans, you are in charge over them, the parents, the guardians, everybody. You have to take care of them till they reach of age. And only then, even when they reach of age, if they are of sound judgment and sound wisdom, then can you allow them to marry, and then can you allow them to have their wealth or have their inheritance and everything. And then there's another verse that talks about, Islam talks about the rights of women, because even with the woman when she's divorced, Islam makes the man the responsible for the financial responsibility of the woman even after he divorces her. So this is a religion that's talking about the rights of women. It has to be a consenting woman, and it says in the Quran you cannot force women to marry against their will. It just has that verse. As for the wives, what I want to say is Muhammad had one wife. He married at the age of 25, and he married a 40-year-old woman. So he married a woman 15 years his senior. He was monogamous to her till her death. So they were married for about 25 years. And then after she died, and while I just want to say another point that when Muhammad brought Islam and he talked about ending idolatry, ending the injustices at that time, he was offered a lot of beautiful women, a lot of wealth, to stop saying what he was saying, because nobody liked what he was saying. He said to, make the slaves equal, give women rights, don't do this, bad practice, be just, be kind, give off your wealth. Nobody liked that message. The Quraysh, or the ruling people at that time, and he was part of that family, they offered him a lot of bribes, and several of those bribes involved beautiful women. Hey, we'll marry you to a beautiful woman. You give up this thought, or we'll give you a lot of wealth, we'll make you king, we'll give you this position. Muhammad refused all of that. Muhammad lived his life very simply. Even Christian scholars, Jewish scholars, even historians, nobody has been able to find any fault in his character. They know him to be a man of honor, an upright man, a man of virtue, a man who was known. His two titles were Sadiq and Amin, which means the trustworthy and the truthful. Anybody could bring their wealth, trust him with it, and he would, you knew you would get it fully back. And he was a man who hardly ate. He fasted most of the time. He never ate full stomach. He lived his life in 2 pairs of clothing. So you have to put 2 and 2 together and come to a conclusion with this life of this whole man. He was not self-indulgent at all. He married a woman his senior. She had proposed marriage to him. He used to work for her. He accepted. He was monogamous to her. He fathered only her children. He was just with her. After she died, and at that time when Islam was coming up, Islam was now in the forefront after 10 years of silent practice. There were wars that were starting to happen. There was a lot of tension between the different tribes. Many of his companions, he was also very sorrowful and very distraught when his wife died, suggested that he take on marry another person or bring a wife into his life to give him some peace and some love. Why he married more than one after Khadija, after being monogamous to her, after living a life of extreme purity, extreme piety, why he did that, the Muslims, we believe, and what we see of Muhammad's life is that he lived a life of extreme purity, simplicity, and a life with no indulgences, and he denied himself even lawful things like food or water. He kept giving whatever he got. He was known to sometimes pelt stones over his stomach so people would not notice how thin he was, because and him and his family always gave their food to the poor. There was many instances when they had the food, but they did not even eat it because somebody came to the door and they gave of that. So they lived a life of extreme purity and self-discipline. The reason the marriages, we believe, had to happen was that God, in his infinite wisdom, in those feuding times between the different tribes, he married these women because that became actually the peace, that brought about the peace between the different tribes, and that paved the way, and that was the bridge for the different feuding tribes to come together. Because then when he married these women, and I just want to make another point that these women most of them were widows or divorced, except for Aisha, and they were all women that needed protection. Now, some of them belonged to nobility and were the wives of kings or the widows of very noble men, and they refused to marry a common person. So to give them and their children protection, he had to marry them because the women themselves demanded that unless Muhammad marries us, we will not accept any other man's proposal, because all of those Muslim men who were trying to help these widows and the children to give them respect, they themselves demanded it. So yes, he did indulge in multiple marriages after Khadija, but keep in mind he was more than 50 years of age when he started that. He still lived a life of extreme simplicity, so those marriages were really not for desire or to have enjoyment in his life, but as part of God's command and wisdom to bring about protection for these women and children, to give them a man as a protector whose stature they would accept, and also to bridge the feud, to bring about peace to the feuding tribes and the feuding people in those times, because there were wars, there was tensions, and they had to bring about peace and calm. And these wives also became teachers for women, because then they would go back within their families and talk about it and talk about being good. So really, it was really more to have him train these women, because that was the only way for him to bring them in his life, to marry them, because in the Arabian culture and in Islam is a very pure religion. You cannot have any other contact with women except for marriage. So it was done for him to teach them, and especially Aisha was young. Yes, she was not a kid when she married him. She was 18 to 20, but she was younger than him. But she loved and adored him. And even all Christian historians have talked about her recounts of the Prophet, how much she loved him, how much honored she felt that she was his wife. And Aisha was a very vivacious and very eloquent woman. She fought a war. She taught. She was a scholar. She taught people about Islam, narrated the sayings of the Prophet. And we believe that one reason why he was God gave him the guidance to marry a younger woman was for more times to come, there was a person from his family who was able to teach. Because Aisha became this big scholar and teacher of Islam. And she was very young, so she was able to live for longer and teach that. And she had immense regard and love for the Prophet.
All right, Amna, thank you again for the response. Don't change the channel, folks. We need to take a quick break, but we will be right back.
On Saturday, April 30th, stop by Dacey Village from 3 to 6 p.m. for a night of food, fun, and more.
Bring the kids too.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us again. We're back, and we have another question right down here in the front row.
Can you tell me if our action affects our lives?
Very pertinent, and I think from what I've understood and read, it's pretty much a part of all religions. That if you do good, basically it's what you sow shall you reap. We also call it makafat or makafat amal. In my language, we say makafat amal, which is that whatever you do, that action reflects in your life. So if you do bad, you're a hate monger, you hate people, you hurt others, you're unjust, no prayer in your life, bad things, bad thoughts, you will get bad. And then if you do good things, you will get good. Now, what I do want to say is, yes, Islam does have a big concept of that. But I do want, and I will quote some verses on that rule that you're talking about, but I do want to say that not all affliction in Islam is supposed to come from a bad action of a person. So the belief is that sometimes you are put through a trial or a test or a bad thing to test you out, to see how you persevere, for God to send the test of your belief, or your iman, we call it. And then the other reason is for God to teach you something. Because sometimes we may not have a certain level of learning. So when we do something like, when we are put through something, God is trying to teach us something. So it's not necessarily that we were bad, but maybe we needed to be taught something. But definitely, what you sow, what you shall reap is there. And it's mentioned in the context of both this world and the hereafter. Some Muslims may have interpreted to just mean hereafter, but there are many references that show that in this world as well, good benefits you, and then bad hurts you as well. So let me directly go to some of the Quranic quotes on that. And let me see, chapter 4 Al-Nisa, in verse 40, it says, Inna Allaha la yazlimu misqala zarratin wa in taku hasanatan yudaifuha wa yuti min ladunhu ajran azima. Allah is never unjust. So it's saying God is never unjust in the least degree. If there is any good done, He doubleth it and giveth from His own presence a great reward. So if you do good, He usually doubles it. So the concept of justice of God is that if you do bad, you are punished according to that. But if you do good, God in His infinite mercy and kindness gives us double or more than double of that. And then Let me see, I believe there are other verses. Let me see what all I can find. In chapter 76, verse 22, it says, Inna haza kana lakum jaza'un wa kana sa'yukum mashkura. Verily, there is a reward for you, and your endeavor is accepted and recognized. So it's talking about whatever good deed done with pure intentions, there is a reward, and your good deed is recognized. Then there is another chapter 99, Surah Zalzala, and in verses 7 and 8, God says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. This is actually more in the context of the hereafter, but there are some other references in the Quran that also talk about that, look, if you do something wrong, whatever bad thing happens to you, it comes because of your own wrongdoing and your action, your bad actions. But I will translate this 7 and 8 verse. Then shall anyone who had done an atom's weight of good see it, and anyone who has done an atom's weight of evil shall see it. There's another verse, I don't have the exact Arabic code, but what it says is that, O you human beings, any bad thing that befalls you is due to your own actions. And any good that comes to you comes because of God's bounty or God's grace unto you. So many of the Quranic verses talk about reaping the reward both of good deeds in this world and the hereafter. And then actually the Quran is a recount of history. And if you read the whole Quran, it talks about destroying many nations that were really rebellious against God, that were bad. They were idolaters, they hurt people, they killed, the kings became gods, and the common man had no life. So the Quran constantly talks about what they did, and because of that, the punishment. God actually annihilated these nations. You know, we already know of many of these nations. We all study history, that he actually sent calamities from the sky to actually annihilate nations over nations for really wrongdoing. So that concept is definitely there. What you sow shall you reap, and the rule is definitely there in Islam. And it is there in pretty much all the faiths as well.
All right, Amna, thank you so much for your enlightening responses to the great questions we've received today. Thank you so much to the audience for being here and to the viewers at home for tuning in. We will be continuing these sessions in the future, so if you have any questions that you'd like cleared up, please send them in. A number or an email address will be popping up on screen now. Amna, we're always just so happy to have you here and just addressing questions about Islam and the Quran. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's so enlightening for me to see all of you here asking wonderful questions. And because of your questions, you know, I am learning more as well, because I am learning what people are saying or thinking about Islam, and it gives me a chance to explain about Islam. Again, I ask for everyone's forgiveness for whatever it is that I have not answered more clearly, or wherever I have faulted in any way. And thank you so much to the viewers for tuning in. And an assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to Ben, you, all the audience, and of course the viewers. Assalamu alaikum.